Hey, my lovely friends. Hope you're keeping well. Today, we're going to learn more vocabulary words with Dr. Jordan Peterson. As always, we must exercise critical thinking. Let's do this.
Now, what Dawkins does is the same thing that Harris does, is that they're very opposed to the totalitarian proclivity.
Proclivity is the first word of the lesson. This is a natural tendency towards something. For example, I have a proclivity for eating chocolate. If I ate too much chocolate, it would harm my health. So proclivity is kind of like an attraction, a tendency towards something which may not be very good for you. So he says that Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris are opposed to, they're against that proclivity towards totalitarianism, which aims to control all aspects of our lives.
And rightly so. But they identify the totalitarian proclivity with the religious enterprise. Now, there are totalitarian proclivities within the religious enterprise, right? Because the most psychopathic tyrants.
A tyrant is kind of like a dictator who wishes to impose their will and ideas on other people. Let's hear that word again.
Are totalitarian proclivities within the religious enterprise, right? Because the most psychopathic tyrants will use the highest principles to justify their own self-interest. So the worst totalitarians are likely the ones who subvert religion.
He says that those tyrants are going to subvert, which means to undermine or overthrow religion. And I think this is where his views diverge from Sam Harris's and Richard Dawkins. Let's hear that sentence again.
Tyrants will use the highest principles to justify their own self-interest. So the worst totalitarians are likely the ones who subvert religion. And that's rightfully objected to, but you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And
we use this expression, you can't throw the baby with the bathwater, to mean that you can't just get rid of a very good idea because there are elements that can be criticized. It doesn't justify getting rid of that brilliant idea.
Dawkins and Harris both underestimate the necessity of narrative, the irreducible necessity of narrative, and they don't contend with the fact of religious phenomenology, right?
Let's talk about the expression contend with something, which means to grapple with, to deal with. If something presents a challenge to you, you may have to contend with it. You may have to deal with it, even though it may be very difficult or a challenge to you. So let's hear that expression again.
The necessity of narrative, the irreducible necessity of narrative, and they don't contend with the fact of religious phenomenology, right? The religious experience as such, the instinct of meaning. Now, Harris has moved in that direction because he is a devoted meditator. And so he admits in practice that there is a religious enterprise. He doesn't like to concretize it, but
he doesn't like to concretize it. To concretize something means to make something, usually an idea or a concept, very specific and tangible. For instance, what artists tend to do is that they concretize their vision. So they have an idea, and then by creating their art work, they concretize this vision idea.
Partly that's because Sam knows perfectly well at some level that if he concretized his relationship with the divine, his rational mind would tear it to shreds and leave him bereft.
Leave something bereft, leave something lacking. I'll give you an example. When the political leader of a party passed away, it left the members of that party bereft. They sensed a loss. Something was lacking. So let's hear that idea again.
But partly that's because Sam knows perfectly well at some level that if he concretized his relationship with the divine, his rational mind would tear it to shreds.
His rational mind would tear it to shreds. So he says that Sam Harris does not concretize that religious enterprise because the rational mind would object to this.
And leave him bereft. So I have been in contact with Dawkins representatives since you made that video and since Dr. Dawkins and I have been bandying back and forth on Twitter.
To bandy. Bandy is a verb. When you bandy words back and forth, you exchange ideas in a lively or a vigorous way. To bandy words, and it tends to go with a preposition about. So to bandy words about. Anyways, I hope you've learned at least one word with